Minus 15.
Respect all, fear none.
Into the upper deck.
Intensity is not a curfew.
Hello, Utah Street.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Happy October, everyone. We have made it to the last month of the season and the last weekend of the regular season. Welcome into the Masson All Access podcast. Bobby Blanco, Amy Jennings coming at you from the Masson Newsroom live on YouTube and the Masson Nationals Facebook page. Hopefully you're tuning in live and commenting along. We love having you part of the conversation. And if not, you're checking us out after the fact for our last regular season podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, SoundCloud. Amy, there's a lot of baseball we need to talk about. Just to wrap up the regular season, we're going to discuss, hand out some individual awards for the Nationals this season at the end of the show. Talk about the Nationals' last series of the weekend of the season, I guess, against the Red Sox and how they have a major effect on the American League playoff situation. But first, I'm wearing black. We have a big game tonight as University of Maryland alums. Maryland versus number 5 Iowa. Friday Night Lights, blackout. You came in fired up. I'm pumped up. Before we get to the baseball talk, how are you feeling about football tonight?
I'm excited. I don't know how confident I'm feeling about our Terps in this game, but you never know. It's a big stage for our Terps tonight, and we're excited. We should have taken this podcast on the road to Lot 1. Yeah. We could have drank some
Adult beverages, some libations,
and talked about baseball. But it's exciting. I think hopefully it's a good game. Hopefully it's a really good crowd. They have the new video board up.
Yeah, I saw that.
And working.
I can't wait to see that.
Hopefully this week. So that'll be exciting. Big game.
Yeah,
I'm pumped.
Just don't be what happened the last time we did a Friday night blackout against Penn State 2 years ago and lost by 50 points and got shut out. Yeah, hey, to me, you score, that's a win.
Yeah, right.
I mean, we have a better
already ahead.
There's a better quarterback now in Little Tua, Talia Tagovailoa, so that should help us for sure. This is my first game of the season. Obviously, we've been working a lot covering the end of the baseball season. I've been away, so I'm excited to have some fun tonight, enjoy some live football, my first live football event since COVID, which is I'm excited for. It's going to be fun. I mean, everyone who's going out, good luck, have fun, be smart, be safe, but let's show the nation that, College Park is the spring break capital of the world.
That's good. There we go. And then we can go to Bent's.
We can go to Bent's. You're not going to get into Bentley's. My friends wanted to go. You're not going to get into Bentley's. No. Only people who are going to get into Bentley's is Scott Van Pelt.
Yeah, you're right.
He has a table reserved, and he's going to be in there, and he's going to be there all night.
One day we'll be legends like that, Bobby.
Yeah.
One day.
Once we get this podcast taken off, for sure, we'll be able to save our spot at Bentley's. All right, baseball talk. Let's talk about the American League. I mean, I don't know the last time Nats fans might have been this focused on American League baseball because, 30 teams in Major League Baseball, that means that there has to be one interleague matchup during the last weekend of the season. I keep saying that. And for the second time in 3 years, it's the Nationals. Not 2019, they finished against the Indians. Now they're going to finish against the Red Sox. The Red Sox are right in the thick of the American League wildcard race. There's 4 teams standing. There's a possibility of a 4-way tie. There's an even stronger possibility of a 3-way tie. The Nationals aren't going to make the postseason. We know that. We've known that for a while, but the fact that they are playing a meaningful game for someone, and that we talked about how scrappy they've been all season long, it could be in for an exciting weekend of baseball on South Capitol Street.
It's crazy that we're talking about a Nationals series here, and we're talking about playoffs.
Yeah.
So it's crazy how these teams, some of the worst teams. I mean, the Red Sox played the Orioles this week, and now they're going to finish out the season with the Nationals. It's kind of crazy that 2 of worst teams in baseball right now have such a big influence on the postseason. So it's exciting. It's definitely something for Nationals fans to look out for, especially if you have a particular hate for the Yankees or the Red Sox, which a lot of teams do.
Yeah, and people were saying that the Red Sox were just going to walk to the postseason because, like you said, they finished with the Orioles, who are fighting for the number 1 overall pick next year. They're finishing against the Nationals, who are fighting to not finish last place in the NL East for the second straight year. The Red Sox just lost 2 of 3 in Baltimore, so they are not coming in hot to DC.
Right.
I mean, they need to win these games, but they're not playing their best at probably the worst time. They do have quite an advantage. Let's set the stage right now. Let's look at the American League wildcard standings. The Yankees have a 2-game lead in the number 1 wildcard spot. Boston is 2 games behind them. Tied with them are the Seattle Mariners. I know a lot of people want to see the Mariners back in the postseason for the first time since 2001. Toronto is 1 game back, and the Oakland Athletics were eliminated on Wednesday night. So only 4 teams remaining in New York, Boston, Seattle, and Toronto. Like we said, Boston has 3 games in D.C. New York has 3 games at home against the Rays. The Rays have nothing to play for. They have locked up the number 1 overall seed in the American League. They'll have home field advantage throughout the American League playoffs. Seattle hosts the Angels, who are a sub-500 team, and obviously have a lot of injuries and pitching issues. And Toronto hosts the previously mentioned Orioles at home up in Toronto at Rogers Center. So, if you're looking at this, on paper, the Yankees have the toughest schedule, but they also have the biggest advantage. They have a 2-game lead. They're probably they basically need to win 1 game, and they're in this weekend. And like I said, Rays have nothing to play for. They do have obviously a lot of depth on that team, a lot of talent. They're about to win 100 games, so it's not going to be a cakewalk. But Seattle playing the Angels at home. Boston's the only team of those 4 on the road.
Right.
And they're playing a scrappy Nationals team. If I'm a Red Sox fan, I'm a little nervous.
Right. I mean, yeah, it's never good when a team like the Nationals could kind of decide your fate to a certain extent. The Yankees are in the position where they need to win. It's not going to be super easy. They have Toronto, and they just had Toronto, and now they have Tampa to finish out the season. Not going to be super easy, but it's a lot better to be in the position where you kind of just have to win to make it. Whereas Boston, you're a little bit worried, especially how they played 2 out of 3 games this week.
The Mariners are 10-6 against the Angels this season. The Blue Jays are 11-5 against the Orioles this season. So both of those teams have had success against their opponents for this upcoming weekend. I don't think the Red Sox and Nats have played yet this season. I don't remember how they finished last year. And like I said, Rays have nothing to play for. We probably won't see too many starters playing too many innings over the course of the weekend. So, and I think the Yankees just need to win 1 game. I'll break it down a little bit more. But first off, let's just talk about the tying scenarios and how this will play out.
Bobby, he had a beautiful breakdown on Twitter. When was it, yesterday?
It was yesterday afternoon.
I was very impressed.
That's what I do when I'm bored on an off day. The Nationals are off day, and I just look at standings.
It
and
makes
make
my
numbers.
head scratch.
Yeah, do some math. It's always fun when you do all that work and then you look at it, you review it this morning and realize you made 1 small mistake.
Oh, no.
I know.
No.
But I won't point it out. If you know what it is, you know what it is, and we don't have to talk about it. All right, so the way that the tiebreakers are going to work, and Jeff Passan has also tweeted this out too for ESPN. So if 2 teams are tied for the wild card, it's pretty simple. Whoever owns the head-to-head record will then host the wild card game. There's no extra game to be played. They will just play the American League wild card game on Tuesday night, and whoever has the head-to-head record will host it. And that favors actually the Red Sox. They have won the head-to-head record against the Yankees, the Blue Jays, and Seattle this year. So if they end up in a first-place tie with anybody, they're going to host the wild card game as long as it's just a 2-way tie. Then next tiebreaker will be Toronto. Toronto won the season series over the Yankees and the Mariners. And actually, the Mariners won 5-2 over the Yankees this year. So if the Yankees end up tying with anybody, they're pretty much screwed because they didn't win a single season series against any of these teams. So the Yankees, like I said, they need to win at least 1, maybe 2 games to secure that number 1 wildcard spot in order to host a game on Tuesday night. That's if 2 teams are tied for the wildcard spot. If 3 teams are tied, it gets a little more fun. All right. So in the case of a 3-way tie, teams would be designated A, B, or C. It's a little complicated, but follow me here. And then head-to-head records would dictate how you choose that. So let's first of all talk about the games. ABC, Club A would host Club B for 1 game. That probably would be, I'm guessing, Monday. Or maybe, I don't know how you do that with the wildcard game Tuesday.
Maybe. Oh, yeah.
Maybe they pushed the wildcard game back to Wednesday. So Club A would host Club B for 1 game. The winner gets the number 1 wildcard spot. So they automatically advance to the wildcard game, right? Club C would then host the loser of the first game between A and B. Got it?
Okay.
The winner of that game would then be the second wildcard spot.
Right.
And then A, B, and C designations are determined by the head-to-head record, and the teams get to pick which one. So it's basically a a draft order.
Got it.
So whoever has the best head-to-head record, in this case the
pick.
Red Sox, will get to pick which one they want. Whoever has the next best head-to-head record, which the case would be the Blue Jays, would pick. And if it's Seattle, it'll be Seattle. Yankees, again, are screwed if they're because they will not get the pick. They will get whatever's left over. So you would think if it comes to that, let's just, for example, say, let's just, because it's easier, they're in the same division. Let's just say it's Boston, Toronto, and New York. You would think the Red Sox would pick Club A, right? You would get a home game, and you would get at least 2 chances at it.
Right.
If you lose that game, you get to play a second game to get back into the wild card. That's probably the
That's
ideal.
the best. Yeah, they'd pick that.
So then who would the Blue Jays pick? Because if you pick B, if you lose the first game, you're going back on the road. Would you rather have 2 chances at winning, or would you rather ensure you have a home game? Because the Club B does not get a home game, assuming they don't win the first game.
Huge difference when it comes down to
Club B. So if Toronto's if it's Red Sox A, Blue Jays B, Yankees C, right?
right.
So the first game would be Blue Jays at Red Sox. Red Sox win that game, they're the number 1 wild card. Blue Jays would then go to New York and play at Yankee Stadium. So you're playing, if you're the B team,
You don't want that.
You get 2 games, but they
Right.
would both be on the road if you don't win the first one.
I mean, obviously, you like your odds when you have 2 chances. That's tough.
Would you rather
That is
play at
tough.
Fenway and Yankee Stadium, or take the risk and play 1 game at home at Rogers Center? I think I would take my chances
And play
and play
at home.
at home. No, play 2 games. I don't think I would play 2 games. It's just better odds. I mean,
Yeah, you're good.
look what the Nationals just did in 2019. Home field advantage doesn't mean nothing.
You take your chance. You take your
The odds.
The odds.
Yeah, the higher odds
Yeah.
of playing 2 games.
yeah.
And, the head-to-heads have been close. Boston and Toronto went 10-9 this season. Toronto and New York went 11-8. Boston and New York went 10-9. Yeah. So it's like I didn't.
You want to play as many games as you can.
Right. I didn't dive too deep on who won on the road versus at home, but
Yankee
especially in
Stadium
division opponents.
And Fenway are 2 places you don't want to be playing for your postseason chances.
Yeah, and if they're division opponents, you're used to playing in those stadiums anyway.
Well, that's true.
If you have to go to Seattle, though, maybe you want.
I think you
don't want to travel across the country and then travel back and play 2 games in 2. Maybe you'll say, you know what? I'll take it. I'll take the 1 game.
Right, and you say you're trusting your team, but you could say that both ways. Like you're trusting your team to win a game at home, or you like your odds. You trust they're professional baseball players. They can play either of those places. It's just obviously not ideal. I don't know. That's complicated.
It's complicated.
That's tough. If it comes down to that, that's going to be crazy.
We don't get paid the big bucks to make those calls.
Yeah.
But I don't want to be
And
the
I'm glad I
GM,
don't.
the GM or manager. I guess the GM and manager make that call, right?
Because then you look dumb. You take that game at home, you lose.
Yeah,
you
it's
look
like-
stupid. When
Yeah,
you
oh,
could
it's
have
a-
had 2 opportunities, you look dumb.
It's a damned if you do, damned if you don't.
At least if you play 2 games, you're like, well, we took
had-
our best chances.
Yeah, you had 2 shots at
Yeah.
it. That's true. Yeah, I think I would take that too. It's just interesting. And,
No, it is.
I mean, it's a guts. What if
And you don't see it.
Well,
So
how badass would it be if you said, nope, we're doing the 1 game at home, and then you win by a lot, and you're like, told you, we need our home crowd, and that's all we need. Woo! And then there's still the wild card game to play after that. And then just for fun, I think there's a small chance. I think the 3-way tie, according to Jeff Passan, has like a 4% chance of happening. So I'm guessing a 4-way tie has an even less chance of happening. But in that instance, I have not seen an actual definition of how this will work. But my guess would be it would be the same idea, A, B, C, D designations, which would probably assume. Here's the only
the whole picking thing is weird.
And they would play head-to-head. So it would be 2 head-to-head matchups. Winners advance.
Yeah.
But I guess the only thing would be your designation. So say.
That's more simple when you.
But like it gets down to. Like, okay, so say the Red Sox take A, you get a home field game. The Blue Jays take B, you get a home field game. Now you're Seattle, say you're C. Do you take? Then you get to pick your opponent essentially. Would you rather go to Boston or would you rather go to? Because my guess would.
So you know where
I don't
they're
know,
going.
but my
That
guess it
does-
would be like A versus D, B versus C.
Right.
Or like,
I
I'm
can't
sure you would know the
imagine-
matchup.
I can't imagine you're picking who you're playing though.
I think you would be. I would think it'd be known who is traveling where. Like, if it's A versus C or A versus D, whatever it may be. I would assume because then, I mean, what's the point of? Then it's just all right. Who your top two teams? You get home field, and then we'll just do a random shuffle.
Like, quite literally, never you get to pick where you play, except in this situation.
I feel like there's an instance where you can pick you can pick your opponent. I can't think of it top of my head, but it's just interesting. I did not find a clear definition of how that would work in case of a 4-way tie, but it would be 2 head-to-head matchups. Winners go on to the wild card game.
That's crazy.
So we could be in for
this is gonna get really crazy.
Really crazy from here on through October. Really,
right?
It's just gonna have wild baseball.
Yeah, but then they'll have to push back the wild card because the season ends Sunday.
Right. Well, I mean, there's the off day Monday. So if it's a 3-way tie, they would have to push it back.
There's no way they turn around and
no. You can't do double. You can't do doubleheader on the road one day, and then So it would be you have 2 wild card games on Wednesday. And then I guess that would also push back. I mean, I guess you can't push back the American League Division Series. They would have to travel again the next day and start Game 1 at Tampa Bay.
Baseball's crazy these days, though. I feel like this is going to happen or something.
I really hope. I mean, it's. I'm sure it's very stressful for fans and for the teams.
Yeah.
As fan of the Nationals and
they can just sit back and
covering the Nationals. We have. I mean. Soon as Sunday's over, it is the off season. We can just sit back and watch baseball for the fun of it and not worry about travel arrangements, booking flights, hotels.
Where are they going? Are they going here or there?
That was the most. I mean, there's a lot of stressful things about the 2019 postseason, but trying to figure out where to go after the wild card game. I mean, you knew you were going to LA, but from there, if they won Game 5 to Atlanta or St. Louis. But then St. Louis won, so then you had to book flights, but you weren't sure if they're going to win. It was just the whole thing. So I do not envy our fellow reporters who are covering these teams for the next week or so, for the next month or so. But it's
still
fun.
covering postseason baseball. It's fun.
Yeah. Do you have a prediction by the end of Sunday night? Do you have a prediction of what will happen? We'll make our actual postseason once the bracket is complete. We'll make our own full bracket predictions on the pod. But do you have a prediction of how the regular season's going to end?
I can't.
You can't?
No.
I think the Yankees pull it out. They won last night and the Red Sox lost.
My dad will say, "You just jinxed him."
Okay, well, I'm sorry, Mr. Jennings. Hey, my grandfather's a Yankees fan too, so hopefully he's not listening and thinks I'm jinxing them.
Grandpa?
I think the Yankees with a 2-game lead. They need just to win 1 game against a Rays team that's not going to be trying. I think that's the 1 game they get. They're going to be in the wild card game at least. We know that for sure. And I would think they pull out at least 2 this weekend.
Yeah, the thing is, I think if the Rays were playing a different team, it would be, like you mentioned, resting guys and stuff like that. You hope that they do. But seeing as that they're playing the Yankees, I think it's going to be a little bit different than if they were playing an out-of-league game, kind of like these other 2 teams are. You know what I mean? So I think it kind of like you said, it's not going to be any easy win for the Yankees.
Oh no, and like I said too, it's not just any other team that's not trying and not playing their starters.
Exactly. Yep.
The Rays have 28 players with 28 players top to bottom who can play Major League Baseball. They are a very deep organization and Major League team.
Right.
They have guys that can play, so it's not going to be a walk in Central Park for the Yankees. Thank you.
That's good.
So yeah, it's not going to be easy, but with the Yankees playing their full starters, I think
that's your prediction. You think the Yankees?
Yeah, I think the Yankees pull it out.
No tying. Nonsense.
I want to give the Nationals credit. I think the Nationals can be huge spoilers this weekend. I think they can at least make the Red Sox sweat.
Rogers,
Gray, questionable. TB announced.
Espino, maybe.
My guess is going to be a combination of Espino and Fetty out of the bullpen following him, because Fetty only pitched 20 pitches the other night. Espino only threw 36 in that rain-delayed game in Colorado. Fetty is already on extra rest, so he can kind of treat Wednesday's game as a bullpen session, and then get to Sunday. Also, the last game of the season. I mean, you can kind of empty the tank. It's not like he has full days off. So my guess is going to be Espino opening for a couple of innings. Fetty follows him, and then you get into the bullpen for the last game of the season. But yeah, I mean,
Roy Howard said, "Mariners."
Let's go Mariners. I mean, there's a lot. Mariners Twitter is hilarious. They're everywhere.
It's funny. It's good right now.
It's so good. And I would love to see the Mariners make the playoffs at least make it a tie or something.
Right.
Give them
make
a chance.
It interesting,
yeah,
right?
I mean, good for them. For a team that everyone thought was going to finish near the bottom and be picking in the top 10 again. good for that. I mean, one of the best stories in the league this year. So I think the Yankees pull it out. I think the Nationals make the Red Sox sweat. Ohtani is not pitching for the Angels this weekend. He's only batting, which is still dangerous, but I don't know who else the supporting cast the Angels have. I think that was, what's the Mariners Stadium? Safeco Field? No, that sounds wrong. I think Seattle's going to be bumping. I think they're going to be pushing hard. I can see Seattle making the Red Sox sweat too. And I think there's a good chance the Blue Jays do sweep the Orioles or at least win 2. It might not be enough because they are the odd man out with being a couple games back.
Okay. T-Mobile Park.
T-Mobile Park.
I didn't know that.
So my guess is going to be just for the fun of it and just because the Nationals are playing the Red Sox, let's go Yankees-Mariners.
Okay.
It's.
I think that's
they're
that's actually a
tied.
good prediction.
They're tied, right? They're at the top. I mean, they're head-to-head. Mariners win 2, Red Sox lose 2, Mariners are in.
I think that's a really good prediction.
Where are all the Seattle fans?
Right.
They got to be huge Nationals fans this weekend.
Yeah.
Let's bring it.
I think the Nationals. I think they'll win too.
Scrappy team.
At least one, but I think they can win.
Juan
too.
Soto's not going to see a single pitch this weekend.
Right? No, he's not. But not to mention, he's going for the batting title right now. So it's
and MVP
and MVP making a huge push for MVP now. So that makes it all the more interesting. He's certainly not going to lay off this weekend.
Yep.
So.
All right, so just to recap, 3 games, Red Sox at Nationals Park, Yankees hosting Rays, Seattle hosting the Angels, and the Blue Jays hosting the Orioles. That's all the baseball you need to watch out and keep an eye on this weekend. It's going to make for exciting. Who knew that the Nationals were going to play such a big factor in the American League to end the season, but here they are. Should be fun baseball on national. And, who doesn't want to knock the Red Sox out of the postseason?
Yeah,
I did see some fans say that, no, we should let Schwarber get in.
Oh. No,
it's
okay.
Like Kyle Schwarber, he was here for 7 months.
Yeah.
He's not like he was here for 7 years.
We're not talking about Trey Turner.
Right.
Well, even then, it's kind of different. But
if it was Trey Turner, I would feel a little more about it.
Or maybe Trey Turner, let's say Nationals, he didn't win the World Series. It'd be like his first play. You know what I mean? The Nationals never got there. He gets traded. And, he makes it and you're excited for him type of situation.
I guess my point more is hey, I love the loyalty and the support Nationals fans give their players. Anyone who dons the curly W, good for you guys. I'm the same way. But Kyle Schwarber was here for 7 months.
Yeah, it's
and
different.
he played really well.
Different.
He played really well, but he was only here for 7 months.
Yeah.
We got a couple players back for him. Best of luck to you.
Yeah.
Don't want the Red Sox winning.
He can just have a good series this weekend. A little mini homecoming or something.
The ideal, exactly. Ideal scenario, Kyle Schwarber goes 12 for 12 with 12 home runs over the weekend and 48 RBIs, and the Red Sox lose all 3 games.
Yeah, there we go. All right.
That's it. All right, well, you mentioned awards. We did want to hand out a couple of end-of-season awards with only 3 games left in the regular season. I think next week we'll kind of preview the postseason at large and also kind of preview the Nationals off-season, add some important dates and stuff like that. But we want to hand out some awards. The Nationals earlier today, we are live on Facebook and YouTube, by the way. Earlier today, announced their team awards. Juan Soto was named the Player of the Year. Kyle Finnegan was named Pitcher of the Year, and the good guy was awarded to Josh Bell, as voted on by the DC media. I had Soto and Finnegan on my ballot. I had Apollo Espino as the good guy, but obviously Josh Bell deserved that award well. All the things he did in the community, his availability to the media after tough games, even when he was slumping earlier in the season, very deserving of that award. So, what did your ballot look like?
Let's start. How do we want to do it? Go down.
Well, let's just start with the 3 that
guys?
the Nationals just did award, and then we've got a couple extras that we can add in.
So Soto and Finnegan would be mine, and then my good guy award would go to Alex Avila.
Oh,
Josh Bell would be a close second, but I just think Alex Avila, with kind of how he stepped up, he ended up being out a whole month because he was playing a position he had never played before in his last season of his career. And now he's stepping up and mentoring these young catchers and has plans to get back in baseball, because he's enjoying mentoring these young guys. So that goes to mine. But, of course, Juan Soto obviously has to be Player of the Year, my MVP.
Yeah.
And Kyle Finnegan, definitely the best pitcher.
It was a tough year for pitching for the Nationals, as we have documented well on the pod. And Kyle Finnegan, even I think like we talked about a couple weeks ago, he's been good consistently, and so when he does slip up, it's magnified a lot. the blown saves he's had over the past couple months. But don't forget, I mean, this is the most innings he's ever pitched in his career.
Right.
And he's the only pitcher period with the appropriate amount of appearances with an ERA under, I think it's like 370.
Yeah.
I think he's at like 340 or something. So, yeah, he deserved that as well. I really like the Avila pick. That's a good call. People forget that he's been out for so long, from beginning of July to just a couple weeks ago, that he's been such a major role on this team as a mentor. And he was always available to the media too, even after tough games when he was playing. So that's a good call too. But Josh Bell, very deserving as well. The Nationals got a good one. Looking forward to a strong start to the season next year for Josh Bell. All right, let's break it down a little bit further. Let's go to best starting pitcher. Obviously, Finnegan, we awarded Finnegan the best overall pitcher, but let's go to the rotation. It was a tough year for a team that prides itself on its starting pitcher. Who'd you have as the best starting pitcher?
This was really kind of tough, and Bobby and I were talking about this, I think, before our last podcast or something, and we were like, best pitcher, Kyle Finnegan, but if you have to go with the starter, it kind of makes it a lot more difficult. I think it comes down to Paulo Espino and Eric Fedde in my eyes. I think really the only difference then, if you get into their stats, is that Eric Fedde's FIP is almost a whole run lower than his ERA or his fielding independent pitching, where Paulo Espino's is higher. And that's in 10 more starts. Fedde had 10 more starts than Paulo Espino this year. So really, if you kind of look at their starts and look at the quality of their starts, it's not too far off. That's kind of really the only thing that really is a distinguishing factor between those two. Maybe Eric Fedde pitched in some more difficult games or in some bad luck with the defense behind him, because we know that's been a little bit questionable for the Nationals this year.
Yeah.
So I would go with Eric Fedde.
Yeah. Also, just a qualifier that I forgot to mention at the top of this conversation. We are only naming players who are currently on the 40-man roster. So obviously it probably would have been Max Scherzer, but no longer here. So you have to be currently on the 40-man roster as of October 1st, 2021 to be qualified for these awards. I agree. I have Paulo Espino too. Look, I mean, this is a guy that came in last year, pitched a couple of good innings. People were like, where did this guy come from? And now coming into this year, Nationals giving him another chance. He was very grateful after his last start about the opportunity he has here in D.C. And pitched to a 4.50 ERA. That doesn't jump off the page, but when you look at some of these other ERAs, he's the second best behind Joe Ross.
Right.
Still left on the roster, and Ross has been hurt for half the season. And not to mention, I mean, I know we're talking about starter, but Paulo Espino also attributed out of the bullpen too at times. I mean, he was probably runner-up for best pitcher overall, I would assume, because of he was a Swiss Army knife. David Martinez called him his secret weapon.
Nobody saw it coming.
No.
And he was such a pleasant surprise at the beginning. He made a couple really good starts at the beginning. Obviously, then it fell off a little bit. He wasn't as lucky, but you're absolutely right about that. And, you mentioned him. You have him for your good guy award. He was a huge veteran influence, Davey Martinez was saying, off the field as well.
And such a nice guy, too. I mean,
right.
He was just so easy to talk to. I also kind of want to give a shout out to Joe Ross. Again, another season cut short due to injury. 4.02 ERA. I mean, this was really it was the first season that we've seen from Joe Ross since his Tommy John surgery, and he was able to make 19 starts. He got hurt, but he was on his way to making about 30 starts. 4.02 ERA, that is worth it. That was a pretty decent comeback. Ups and downs. I mean, he had some really good outings, and he had some really tough outings, especially early on the season. Remember, early on in the season, he was the best pitcher. Even at times a little better than Max Scherzer while Max was trying to get his footing at the start of the regular season. Joe Ross came out firing. I think had like 3 scoreless outings to start the year. So we were like, this is the Joe Ross we were hoping to see. So he's not, because he's been hurt and he's missing the regular season. The best ability is availability. I can't give him the award, but he does deserve recognition for what he did this season. 2 years, I guess, removed from recovering from Tommy John.
Yep. And this is, we've been waiting for it and waiting for it and waiting for it, and you just want to see him be able to stay healthy. And I think Joe Ross, next year, starting pitching is going to be an issue again. You're kind of hoping and praying that Patrick Corbin finally gets it together. Obviously, his last start was one of his best, and he kind of finished the season on a high note, but you're hoping he has a bounce-back year. Steven Strasburg is finally able to stay healthy, and then I think Joe Ross is going to be a huge part of this little potion, and you kind of hope it all works out, but staying healthy is going to be super important for him. But in his outings this year, especially towards the beginning of the season, like you mentioned, you saw what you've been waiting for out of Joe Ross.
Yeah. All right, moving to the bullpen. We already talked about Kyle Finnegan. Any other shout-outs you want to give from guys from the bullpen? That's a no.
It's going to be a no for me. I mean, he's the only one in this bullpen that has an ERA over 3.50. Obviously has the most saves, the most innings out of this bullpen. And, Kyle Finnegan went from a kind of let's see this year to their default closer. But outside of him, I mean, this is a bullpen that's tied for third in the most blown saves, has the third highest ERA in baseball. Not looking so good. So, but you have a bright spot. I can tell you're.
I have two, and it's 2.5. Let's call it. There's stretches for sure. Kyle Finnegan, like you said, was the best pitcher. There's not a lot of bright spots, but if we want to nitpick and
we're going to finish it on a high note.
Finish on a high note.
Bring it in.
Positivity. Let's go Terps. Let's go Nats. Paul Espino, like I mentioned, just his availability to do whatever was asked of him. He had a 3.42 ERA in 16 appearances out of the bullpen. That's not a lot of appearances because the Nationals needed him in the rotation. Right. But when he was called upon in 23 and 2/3 innings out of the pen, he performed really well. And then I also slide down. There also aren't a lot of guys with the appropriate amount of to qualify the innings, the appearances. I want to give a shout out to Mason Thompson. He surprisingly has 26 appearances already since coming over at the deadline. 3.74 ERA. That already ranks 5th in this Nationals bullpen, which is pretty crazy. But actually, let's call it 3rd because first is Sean Nolan, who only has 4 appearances. Or 4th, I should say. And then Ryan Harper. Look, we can laugh at Ryan Harper. His ERA is what it is because he wasn't put in high leverage situations. That being said, he still got the job done, even though they weren't high leverage situations. He got outs. That's what you ask for in a reliever. Right. Now, when he was put in high leverage situations, he struggled. That's not his MO, okay? That's not what he does. He still, when he was asked to do his job, which was pitch out of low leverage situations, he did.
And not to make excuses for these guys, but really they are being thrown into situations that they are not set up to be pitching in. I mean, Kyle Finnegan, he produced pretty well given the circumstances, but he, in theory, should not be the closer of this team, or that was not the plan. Like you mentioned, guys like Ryan Harper are being put into high leverage situations that they're not supposed to be in. So all things considered, it's not really an excuse for these guys, but there's a lot of guys in these bullpen that wouldn't be there otherwise because of injuries or trades and yada, yada, yada.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, that kind of goes back to the overall issues with the pen and that it wasn't good overall, and which led to a lot of guys pitching out of place, which then led to even worse results. So that's a good point to keep in mind, too, when talking about the relievers. But it's Kyle Finnegan. It's his award. He deserved it. Looking forward to what he can bring next year. Hopefully a bounce-back year from Tanner Rainey, too. And if Kyle Finnegan and Tanner Rainey are your 1-2 punch at the back end, that's hopefully a good thing for the Nationals. Defensive Player of the Year. Essentially Gold Glove, let's call it. I have an interesting one. I'm going to I don't know. Maybe it's not interesting. Maybe it's a very obvious. I'm going Alcides Escobar at shortstop. Per Fangraphs, he has the highest defensive rating on the active roster. Okay. He, I think, is top 2 in defensive runs saved. At shortstop, playing obviously a high leverage situation. This is a guy that was in the minor league system in Kansas City and then came over. And then as soon as Trey Turner was traded off, became the everyday shortstop. He played some second base, of course, when Trey was still here. We talked. When the Nationals made this trade and we were breaking down Alcides Escobar, we said, look, he's got an average, if not slightly above average glove. I mean, he, at the very least, he'll give you solid defense, and that's what he gave them. I mean, it's tough to find really strong defense out there when you no longer have Trey Turner, who would have probably easily been the Defensive Player of the Year.
Yeah, I think that's I like that pick, and those defensive numbers kind of surprised me. And I think that's just because when you're watching the Nationals, I mean, he's made just the other day, made a really nice play at shortstop, but they don't make these errors, and it's kind of, back and forth. He has really good days and some not so great days, but you look at the numbers, they're definitely there, and he's filled a position and done just fine. My defensive player of the year was Juan Soto, kind of the easy pick, but there weren't a whole lot of options defensively on this team.
So, Alcides Escobar leads the team in Fangraphs defensive rating. The only two names above him are Trey Turner and Yan Gomes, of course, not eligible. So Alcides, I think, gave what he was supposed to do. Solid defense. He didn't cost you too many games, and I think that's important, especially at the shortstop position that he had to play on for the last 2 years of the 2 months of the season. Others of note, short sample size, but really like what I saw from Keber Ruiz behind the plate, super athletic. Andrew Stevenson, with the few times he was in the outfield, he's obviously a plus defender with his speed. Arm could maybe work on his arm a little bit, but with his speed, he covers a lot of ground out there. Surprisingly, I mean, let's not forget, Victor Robles was not sent down for his defense. Victor Robles had quality defense all year long. He got sent down because of his bat, so he deserves credit and recognition for the defense that he played out in center field. And then also, surprisingly, Ryan Zimmerman. I mean, he did not play a lot of games.
Ryan Zimmerman was going to be my second, probably.
Yeah, Ryan Zimmerman at first base. He's your best defensive first baseman. Josh Bell deserves credit because he did improve a lot over the course of the season. But Ryan Zimmerman, you knew that he was going to catch every ball thrown to him. He was going to make a lot of stops. He's quick with that glove, even at his age. So he deserves credit, too, for his defense.
Yep. What next, Bravo?
Rookie of the year?
Rookie of the year.
There's a lot of options, but a lot of options, but the problem is small sample sizes.
Right. I'm going to go with, speaking of a small sample size, I'm going to go with Keber Ruiz.
That's mine as well.
Yeah. Again, small sample size, but you have to like what you've seen from him. And he made improvements even just in the small time he was there. He was kind of struggling. He was swinging at a ton of really bad pitches. But you've been able to see the adjustments throughout his short time with the Nationals. His swinging strike percentage has gone down almost 4%. His contact rate has gone up 8%. So he's swinging at better pitches, making better contact. And then, of course, his defense has been, I think, kind of surprised people a little bit. Obviously, he's a catcher, and he's a good catcher. But, that was kind of, his bat was there, but he could improve behind the plate, and almost people were saying Riley Adams might be a little bit better defensively, but he's done just fine, and that's going to go to be my Rookie of the Year.
He had a stellar outing the other day when I think he threw out 2 base runners over the weekend in Cincinnati, defensive-wise. So, yeah, I think he's a lot more athletic than we originally thought coming over from the Dodgers. Especially behind the plate, so his defense has been a pleasant surprise. The offense came along. He has worked his way back up to now basically a 1-to-1 walk-to-strikeout ratio. He worked his average up to 284, which if you take that over the course of a season, you'll take that from your catcher.
Yeah.
That's really good for anyone not named Buster Posey. He's got now 5 extra base hits. I think a majority of those coming over the past week or so. So we're starting to get along. I mean, it's a shame that it's now at the end of the season, but you can see that he is quick to adjust to the major league level and the speed of the game up here, both behind the plate and at the plate as a hitter. So, yeah, Keber Ruiz is my Rookie of the Year. You have the Nationals got their guy, their top prospect. It, of course, was sad to see Max and Trey go to the Dodgers, but the Nationals got a really good one back. And then my runner-up would be another guy they got back would be Josiah Gray. ERA isn't where you would want it to be, but he has shown really good stuff over the course of his starts and taking the ball every 5th day. I mean, we knew the Nationals were going to make him a starter and let him pitch, and he's pitched really well. And finally has had back-to-back wins. He finally got his first major league win, 2 in a row, and he's looked really strong on the mound as well.
Okay, and my runner-up was going to be Trace Barrera.
Ooh, he's on my list too.
Yeah, was kind of also a pleasant surprise for the Nationals this year. It was exciting to kind of see him up and being forced to catch every day there for a little bit before, of course, the trade deadline. He had similar offensive numbers and 20 more plate appearances than Keber Ruiz. I think Keber Ruiz, the thing is to be traded, to come in, be a rookie, and learn this whole new pitching staff and adjust so quickly to the major league level was key, and I think that's what makes the difference.
And And also, don't forget, Tres Barrera was called upon in an emergency situation.
Right.
Like, the Nationals
He stepped
needed
up
him,
too, yeah.
and he played well. And so he wasn't the reason they were losing games because they had to play a rookie at catcher. You know, he played really well. We talked, if we're going to pick a pitcher, we're going to go Mason Thompson. We talked about him a little bit already. We touched on Riley Adams. He deserves some recognition, too, for what he's done coming over at the trade deadline. Sneaky rookie to mention, Yadiel Hernandez is technically still a rookie.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, he is.
His rookie status is not up until the end of the season. So he has to be up
in
there.
Yep.
9 home runs, hitting 275, a lot of strikeouts, 32 RBIs, but he's played 110 games and over 260 at-bats. So technically still a rookie. You wouldn't think of it, but he is, and he needs to be a part of the conversation because he's been there. He's been available all season long, and he's played pretty well when called upon.
Yeah, these guys, I mean, and I also, I don't know why I was thinking for a second when you're looking at these qualifications for a rookie, I was like, Luis Garcia? And then you forget just how many games he's played up at the major league level.
Barely 100.
Yeah.
And same with Carter Kieboom. We talked about it a couple weeks ago. All right, biggest surprise. This can be both good and bad.
Oh, okay. So mine was good, and I went with Lane Thomas, kind of.
Mine was too.
The obvious,
Yeah,
yeah.
you go ahead with Lane.
He's just come up and been absolutely on fire since he's been here. Every game, he just had a big hit in, what's today? Friday and Wednesday's game, even though it didn't end up mattering and you kind of forget about it. But he's just been absolutely on fire since he's came here. He's hitting 285 on the season with a 377 on-base percentage and 892 OPS. He's kind of, other than Juan Soto, been the big spark and a pleasant surprise in a trade that they didn't think was going to be, I think, this rewarding.
I think that's why he's the biggest surprise is because you get a player back for John Lester.
Right.
You're like, okay, who is this guy? How good can he be? And now he's your leadoff hitter and playing solid defense in the outfield.
Right, and potentially going to start there next year.
Yeah.
And, all the eyes, of course, were on that trade with the Dodgers. You're getting Keibert Ruiz, then now the number one prospect in your system. And you he just went under the radar until he started playing. Of course, once they sit Victor Robles down, he's starting in center field every day. And he's definitely been a pleasant surprise. For me, the biggest surprise of this season.
Not only did they send Victor, Lane Thomas beat out the former number one overall prospect for this team.
True.
To be the leadoff hitter and center fielder. And he came over everyone thought he was going to be just a fringe AAA major league player to add some outfield depth. He's probably going to be he's going to be the first National to take an at-bat next year, barring an injury.
Right, and from what you saw in his time in the big leagues with St. Louis, you didn't know what to expect, and you certainly didn't expect this. And maybe it's going to be one of those situations where you just need a change of scenery to get it right.
We knew the speed was there. He's flashed that a lot. We didn't know the bat was there, the power. He's hit a couple of home runs. He's also been hitting for average, getting on base, the on-base percentage. And we didn't know the arm was there, too. He's flashed the arm really well in center field. So biggest surprise, easily Lane Thomas. Honorable mentions, talked about Espino just being able to take the ball in any role. Yadiel Hernandez, a guy that was a good story last year, now is an everyday starter and major contributor. Alcides Escobar, a AAA player you traded for in the beginning of July, then is now your everyday shortstop. And Riley Adams, a guy that you traded for at the deadline too, a catcher you thought was just an added depth piece, but now he's your backup catcher.
And I'll say probably the most recent surprise, Josh Rogers, you could throw in
there
too.
Absolutely. Good one. Yeah. A guy that was cast off by the Orioles. The Nationals signed him to a AAA contract, and then he works his way up to the major league roster and has an ERA under 3 over, I think it's 4 or 5 starts. Yep. So good for him. The bad, there's a lot of, let's talk about Josh Rogers because now we've got his highlights up. Another one of those feel-good stories, and again, like you said about Lane Thomas, maybe just needed a change of scenery, and he kind of has mentioned that a little bit, not trash-talking the Orioles. He just said, I appreciate the opportunity and the time they gave me, but, I just needed a change of scenery and an opportunity elsewhere, and that's what he got at D.C. He pitched, also surprising because he pitched decently, not great at Rochester, and then got the call up and has been pitching great with the Nationals.
Right, and usually it's
Kinda
kind of
switch
the
'em,
opposite.
yeah.
But I guess he was ready. It was showtime. You put him on this stage,
Showtime.
and he's done pretty well. Obviously, low leverage outings,
Yeah.
but still you have to like what you see, and who knows? Yeah, just like you mentioned, he comes here, he might be a completely different talent than, of course, obviously Baltimore evaluated him at.
All right, the bad. There's got to be some bad surprises. It was a tough year. We can't.
Yep.
You got to be fair. Can't be completely positive all the time.
I don't know.
If you need to think, I've got mine.
I was going to say, I don't know if this is necessary. No, I'm going to say this is still a surprise, is Patrick Corbin having another bad year. Given the contract, given what you expected out of him, for him to have been this bad, obviously, he's kind of turned it around towards the end. Not turned it around, made improvements towards the end of the season. It still has to be a surprise that that this guy who was going to be your number 3, a big number 3, has been this bad.
Historically, unfortunately for Patrick, one of the worst seasons a starting pitcher has ever had, wearing a Nationals uniform. Not a good look for him. A guy that you're, attributing a lot of money to, committing a lot of money to, a couple more years to. He's only halfway through his contract. He's not going anywhere. He did not make himself very viable in a trade. And the Nationals can't just cut that money loose. I mean, he's going to have to make starts next year.
Right.
If Strasburg's not ready to go, Patrick Corbin could be your opening day starter next year. So, that was a huge surprise. I mentioned Strasburg. That's a big surprise. Is it, though, doing an injury? You don't think so? I think this may be more so for Corbin than Strauss. Like, kind of attributed struggles last year to the shortened season, the building up in spring training, and then the shutting down for a couple months. Mm-hmm. We said the same thing about Strasburg. Strasburg obviously has a longer history of injury, so maybe it's not a surprise, but it's not a surprise that he got hurt. It's a surprise that he had to be shut down for the entire season early on in the season.
Yeah,
is that
actually,
fair to say?
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. Going into this season, I think it's not that you'd be surprised if you had to bet, I would definitely bet that Steven Strasburg gets hurt because he's been hurt literally every season of his entire career. But
even the good ones.
Yeah, exactly, even the good ones. But he's always come back or come up in the big moments or the big times or the big games. This year, I think, it is surprising. You wouldn't have predicted that he was going to go out so early and be a non-factor of this team.
You would have thought that you would have gotten at least 18, 20 starts from him, and he would make 2 IL stints at some point during the season. But if those 20 starts are great, you would take that. And to hit, he made 5 starts this year, I think it was?
Yeah.
Something like that?
Maybe a little bit
So
less.
That was a big surprise and unfortunate for him. And then we talked about Robles. That was a huge surprise. We thought this would be a breakout year for him. Obviously not the case. Will Harris dealing with another injury. That was bad. Unfortunate for him. Hopefully that was a scary health injury for him. Health issue, I should say. Hopefully he's okay health-wise, but hopefully this isn't the end of his career. Mm-hmm. And then Tanner Rainey was a surprise too, being the best pitcher last year. And then
Tanner Rainey's a good one.
to being one of the worst in the bullpen this year and being sent down at some point.
Yeah, you really hope that he has a completely different 2022. I feel so weird saying 2022.
Yeah.
But you hope he can step up because he was a huge name coming into the season. All we really talked about from this bullpen was, obviously Hudson and Hand, but outside of that was Tanner Rainey. And that was a big disappointment.
Last one. This is a good one to end on. Most improved.
Okay, I like this.
This is like did you do swim team?
No, I didn't.
It was like handing out like the paper plate awards.
Oh yeah, I did that on my dance team.
Oh, okay, dance team. Yeah, same thing. Yeah, so like most improved this year.
I wanted to say Carter Keepin for this, because you can literally he only had one way to go pretty much, especially at the plate, and you could see the improvements that he made. I mean, he significantly improved, and over August, that really good month, he was hitting 289. He's just hit a really bad slump here lately. Really, the entire last month of the season has been really bad for him. And then I was like, okay, you can see the improvements there. And then you look at his defensive numbers, and they are really, really not so good. He went from 4 defensive run saves in 2020 to -7 in 2021, -13 outs above average.
Yikes.
not looking too good for Carter Keegan. So after I saw that, I couldn't say Carter Keegan. Is that he's not yours?
No, he
Okay.
did not make my list. And I thought that'd be a good kind of like a you try.
Yeah.
I mean, I was gonna say at least improved.
Yeah, he did improve. Yeah, that's good.
That's
improved though.
At least improved.
At least improved. That's good.
At least he improved somewhat.
But mine is Josh Bell.
Josh Bell.
Is that yours too?
No, that's a good one too. Though.
Just throughout the course of this season, he has improved significantly. I mean, if you remember at the beginning of the season, we were talking about where is this power? Can you even play him every day and start him over Ryan Zimmerman at this point? He made significant strides throughout the season and, of course, from last year. I mean, all of his offensive numbers have improved from last year. His OPS improved from 669 in 2020 to 814 this year. And I know the defense was kind of a concern, but he's done well defensively. He has the second most outs above average behind Soto on the team. He's tied with Soto in defensive runs saved. And you we're seeing him in the outfield now, which I didn't think we expected at the beginning of the season, of course, like a lot of other things. But I think Josh Bell, just from the start of the season to now, but certainly from last year until now, they're seeing a lot more of what they wanted out of him.
I like that, taking the micro approach to it. Yeah, that's a good one, especially when you look at his entire season and has contributed in such a big way as the number 4 hitter, giving protection to Juan Soto, which he sorely needs. So Josh Bell's a great one. For me, I'll take a macro approach, and I've got 2 names. And, I don't think they're stretches. The numbers aren't beautiful, but it's more of the process, I think, for me, for these 2 guys. And that's Austin Voth and Eric Fetty. I think that they both found their roles, and they were both allowed to fully embrace each of their roles. Fetty as a starter, Voth as a relief pitcher. Voth, I think, only made 1 start the entire year, and he only went 2 innings, so he's probably opening that game, whatever it was. Oh, you know what? It was when he got hit in the eye. That's what it was.
Right.
In Philly. Both ERAs over 5. Fetty was 5.26. Voth was 5.63 and 47 relief appearances. Again, not the most eye-popping numbers.
But
you could argue that they're ugly numbers, but we've talked about, every year going into Joe Ross, Austin Voth, Eric Fetty, who's going to take over that for the starter spot? And we've said, well, maybe one of them should just fully commit to the bullpen and make this a little easier. We did that this year. Voth committed to the bullpen. He pitched well in spots. He obviously ran into some trouble. That might be also a case where, like we talked about earlier, he was pitching out of position in terms of situations he normally wouldn't pitch in. There were times where he was being used a lot, maybe some fatigue in his arm. And then Fetty had I shouldn't say a lot, but a couple of really good outings. I think about that outing in Arizona, a couple of outings later, not to mention he dealt with a COVID issue in the middle of the season. So I think these guys are the most improved because they have solidified themselves in their roles on this team. Fetty's going to be in the rotation next year, and Voth is going to be in the bullpen, assuming they don't need to go, an emergency start or something like that. And I think that's a big step for both of them in their careers.
I think that's fair. I like that. I like those takes. So you think that Fetty, I guess it's so tough given the circumstances of this rotation moving forward, but you think he's a starter?
Yeah, I think Fetty's better suited as a starter. Voth is better suited as a bullpen arm, long reliever, whatever. I don't know if he's a matchup guy yet, but whatever it may be.
Right.
I just because it was always a conversation for so many years. Now it's over. We know what they're going to be. We know.
And that's an improvement, certainly.
That's what I'm saying. And now I think we can set realistic expectations for both of them too, because if we're trying to preview Austin Voth's season, it's like, well, how many starts is he going to get versus how many times he can come out of the bullpen? What can you realistically expect?
Right, and even when we're talking about the best starter, it's kind of tough because Paulo Espino or Eric Fetty, we didn't necessarily know they were going to be starters this season. You know what I mean? So it's kind of hard to set expectations given the circumstances.
And I know David Martinez has mentioned multiple times he's been happy with the way they've pitched. Again, the numbers aren't flashy, but I think they've done their job admirably and setting themselves up for even more success, hopefully next year. Next year's going to be a struggle too. We know that, but hopefully those guys can take another step forward in becoming solid major leaguers because this team's surely going to need them.
Right. And that's why you have to watch, because you kind of go back and you look at these numbers and you're like, oh, not as good as I kind of anticipated. But if you're watching day in and day out, you see these improvements. You see these guys finally fitting into their roles. And you can only get that by watching the game, you know? So it's something for fans to look forward to, especially next year when they might be put to a couple tests.
Speaking of watching the game, this weekend is your last chance to watch Nationals baseball for the 2021 season. All 3 games are on MASN Friday night at 7, Saturday afternoon at 4 o'clock, and of course the Universal start on Sunday at 3 o'clock at Nationals Park. All on MASN, Boston Red Sox, Washington Nationals. Hopefully you can get a chance to go out to the ballpark for the last time before the off season. This is going to be the last time to see baseball, Nationals baseball, until next February. So if you have the opportunity to go out, see the guys. The Nationals do a great job on the last day of the season, the last home game of the season, saluting the fans. So that should be a fun spectacle. Hopefully the weather holds up too. I think, of course, Sunday might rain all day. But either way, tune in
tomorrow.
Support the guys. They've grinded all year long, and they know the support you guys have been giving them, so they really appreciate it. And we can celebrate the year one last time down on South Capitol Street. Big shout out to Brendan Mortensen for working behind the scenes and producing the show. At Amy Jennings News for Amy, I'm at Bobby_Blanco. Be sure to catch the Mass and All Access podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and SoundCloud. And check us live every week throughout the course of the off season on Mass and Nationals Facebook page and YouTube channel. We'll be here all off season long, giving you the Nationals baseball fix that you need. We need to get out of here. We need to get to College Park. Go Terps. Have a good weekend, everybody, and go Nets.